Hello everyone, and welcome once again to this edition of Midweek Encouragement. I'm Ronald Rice. I am your host this evening, and I am the senior pastor of the Pentecostals of Salt Lake in Salt Lake City, Utah. Glad to have you with us tonight. Thank you for joining in and being a part of this time that we have together. It is a pleasure and an honor to be able to share this time with you. We are attempting to look at Jesus in a way that I think is consistent with what it should have been and what should be as a first century Jew, as we're working our way through the Gospels and looking at various accounts and stories of things that happened there. So I want you to join along with us and on this grand journey. So get your Bible, get your note-taking devices or paper or pencil or whatever it is that you take notes on, and do so. If you have questions, message me. Be glad to get back with you and answer any questions that you may have. But thank you for joining us. We are in a series called Like a Daughter, and we are working through a number of miracles and accounts of things that happened. And so walk along this with us. We're in Mark chapter 5, and we're going to be reading verses 37 through 39. We have been going into depth here, unpacking this story where the leader of a synagogue comes to Jesus there in Capernaum and begs him to come and heal his daughter. On the way, there's a woman who has an issue of blood. She touches the fringe of some clothing or something on Jesus, and she is healed. And while he's dealing with that, finishing up with her, the messenger comes and tells Jairus that his daughter has passed away and that there's no need to trouble Jesus any longer. And Jesus tells him, don't be afraid, just believe. And they go on. And so that's where we pick it up here in Mark chapter 5, verses 37 through 39. So read these with me, if you will. Mark chapter 5, 37 through 39. And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." So here we go. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, often called the inner circle, and he leaves all the other 9 of the close followers behind him, maybe for crowd control. We really don't know why. And Jesus and these 3 enter the house of Jairus, and the Bible records that there is a tumult. So you have to understand that this culture was a very emotional culture. When they celebrated, they would go all out. A celebration could last for days, sometimes even weeks. They would even often hire people to add to and even enhance their celebration. When they mourned, they would go all out. They would hire professional mourners to enhance their mourning. It was very common. In our culture, sometimes we hire people to enhance our celebrations too. Sometimes it's at weddings, or maybe it's a birthday party. We might hire a band to play or caterers to serve food. Funerals in our society are quite a bit lower dynamic. In the first century Jewish society, they would hire musicians to come at these sad occasions and play mournful music. And they would also hire professional mourners who would come and weep and moan. It is good to express grief. There's no issue there. These professional musicians and mourners would come and help the family and the friends all express their grief. You know, there are a few subcultures in the United States who still do this to some degree. This culture in the Gospels is a very demonstrative culture. They were not very reserved when it came to celebrating or mourning. When Jesus entered the house, he immediately encountered this tumult of loud weeping and wailing. And so he says to the mourners, why are you making such a commotion? She's not dead, she's sleeping. You can only imagine how that might have been received. Well, let's read it. Mark 5, verses 40 through 43. And they ridiculed him, but when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the child and those who were with him and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha cumi, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the little girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given her to eat. So Jesus tells the mourners to just stop the commotion. The girl is not dead, just sleeping. And all these professional mourners ridiculed him. They were getting paid for this gig, right? So it's like, hey, this was supposed to be a longer time here. We get paid by the hour, maybe. I don't know. It was supposed to last longer. But Jesus puts them all outside. And then Jesus invites the mother and the father of the child, along with, of course, Peter, James, and John. And these 6 people enter the little girl's room where she lay dead. The 3 disciples that Jesus took with him are still very inexperienced and often struggled with their own faith. Help me remember here, these are the guys who just last night were in the boat when Jesus said to them, "Oh, you of little faith." These guys, these 3, were not there because of their great faith. They were there for training. So Jesus clears the room of everyone except the 6 of those. And there they are with the little girl who had died. Now, clearing the room was probably, among other things, because he didn't want the crowd to see what was about to happen. He's still trying to keep things as quiet as possible. So notice Jesus then takes the child by the hand. You're not supposed to do that. This was a dead body. You don't touch dead bodies if you want to remain ceremonially clean. If you do touch a dead body, then you're unclean and you have to go through the rituals to become clean again. And it's a hassle. But even though it was taboo, Jesus takes this little girl's lifeless hand and says, Talitha cumi. And Mark translates it for us. He says, little girl, I say to you, arise. There's a common assumption that the Gospel of Mark is not Mark's account. It was John Mark from the New Testament. John Mark, the relative of Barnabas, over whom Paul and Barnabas had a dispute. But the assumption, and historically it appears that what Mark wrote down was a transcription of what Simon Peter told him. Matthew and Luke also record the same incident here, but neither of them were actually in the room when it happened. Luke obviously was sometime later. Matthew was one of the 12. But Peter, James, and John were all there in the room. So what John Mark is recording was probably told to him by either Peter, James, or John, likely Peter. And so he gives them the exact Aramaic wording. And Jesus used this wording, and then Mark gives a translation of the words. Jesus took her hand, speaks to her, telling her what she is to do. And immediately she arose and walked. And then we find out that she was 12 years old. It is quite interesting that the woman who was healed had her issue for 12 years, and this girl is 12 years old. The healed woman had issues for as long as this little girl had been alive. And in both cases, Jesus healed them immediately. One had suffered long, and the other, it seems, did not. But in both cases, they were healed. It doesn't matter how long that your struggle is, or how long it may be, or how long you may have suffered. The thing to do in any case is just get to Jesus. And get to Jesus with faith. Don't be afraid. Believe. Jesus can break every cycle of addiction. He can break the bondage of low or no self-esteem and self-destruction. He can help you change your prejudice, your attitude toward others. He can and he will, if you believe. This little 12-year-old girl sits up, and all of those in the room are understandably overcome with great amazement. They're shocked, really. Well, all but Jesus, that is. When you believe, and then it happens, it's still amazing. Imagine parents hugging their daughter, tears of joy freely flowing. It was real. It was amazing. And there was great joy in that room. Jesus commanded that they were not to tell anybody about this. And then he says to give the girl a little something to eat. Feeding her is a little detail, just a little detail included here. But it's important to note. Why? Because it's important to understand that Jesus cares about you, even the little details about you and your life. He knows. He cares. He cares about you and the little pains that you suffer, as well as the big ones. Now he tells everybody to keep quiet. Don't tell anybody about what you just saw and what just happened in this room. Don't tell anybody about this. It seems that if the crowds know about this, it was going to really push him out of town altogether. The crowds, you see, were not really committed to the cause. They just wanted to see some sensational sign, some miracle. They just wanted to see the show, if you will. And so it's as if Jesus is saying, if this thing gets out, those uncommitted crowds are going to continue to increase. And here Jesus is trying to pull those who are committed to the cause in closer to him. And bigger crowds were just going to slow down the process. It would also make it harder for people with issues to get to him. You know, we certainly want our church building full of people, but our purpose is to make disciples. We want to bring others along on this journey of pursuing an authentic relationship with Jesus. We absolutely want to do that. That's our call. That's our purpose. And Jesus wants people who are focused on Him and not just there to see the show. He wants people who are with Him, whether or not there's a crowd. We all ought to want to be in the inner room with Him. We all ought to want to be close to Him. Faith must have obedience. Let's take a quick look at Matthew's account of the end of this story. We're going to go to Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9, verse 26 gives us the end of this particular account. Remember, Jesus does not want a lot of attention. I know this seems counterintuitive, perhaps. It's as if He seems to want to leave the room with the little girl now awake and getting something to eat without making any big deal out of it. He's not trying to deceive anybody. He doesn't want the notoriety and the fame that would naturally come from the raising of the dead. So Jesus gave this instruction that they tell no one what happened with the little girl. Matthew 9:26 gives Matthew's account of the end of this, and he says, "And the report of this went out into all the land." Well, so much for trying to keep it quiet, huh? Faith must have obedience. Let's keep reading in Matthew. There's another thing happening here. Matthew 9:27 to 31. Matthew 9:27 to 31. When Jesus departed from there, 2 blind men followed Him, crying out and saying, "Son of David, have mercy on us." And when He had come into the house, the blind men came to Him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" They said to Him, "Yes, Lord." Then He touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, let it be to you." And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly warned them, saying, "See that no one knows it." But when they had departed, they spread the news about Him in all that country. So at this point, Jesus is still in Capernaum. He left the house of Jairus and headed to the house. I mean, we can assume it's his house there where he based out of. And here another story in a series of stories that emphasizes the importance and the impact of faith unfolds here. Jairus believed, remember that one. The woman with the issue believed. And now we have a couple of blind men following Jesus and shouting out, "Son of David, have mercy on us." The term Son of David was specific to the Messiah. So they were first proclaiming publicly their belief that Jesus is the Messiah. And then they follow Him into the house and come directly to Jesus. And what does Jesus ask them? Do you believe? Do you believe I can do this? And their answer is telling as well. Yes, Lord. Again, but now more privately, they are expressing their great faith in Jesus as Messiah. So, make no mistake, calling Him Lord would also indicate they believed that Messiah was indeed God come in flesh. So there they are in the house. "Yes, Lord, we believe." And Jesus responds to their faith by telling them, "According to your faith, let it be to you." Again, emphasizing the importance of faith. Their eyes were opened. Then Jesus gave them the same instructions that he had given the previous ones. They gave to Jairus and all of them there. He says, hey, don't tell anybody about what happened here. The pressure of the crowd, the social pressure to perform is just too big, especially right here in Capernaum. It has become so big that it is now detrimental to the work that Jesus wants to do. Now, we may struggle with this kind of thinking. If any of us were to have something that we think is important and beneficial to the church, or even to society at large, we want to advertise it. We want the notoriety. We want the crowds, because if we got a crowd, then some of them are going to buy that product or be helped by that product. We want to advertise it. We want to create a growing demand for what we have, because the more demand, then logically the more we're going to sell. For the entrepreneurial mind, this is just how one thinks. You have to let the crowd know about your new and helpful thing. Otherwise, it's just a secret with only a select few that's in the know. But Jesus is not marketing, at least not in the way we think of it. This is not a product. And, well, maybe think of it like a family. You don't go around snatching up children in order to grow a bigger and bigger family, right? After a while, that kind of thing's going to completely implode on you. So what do? Well, we thank God for the children we have been given, and then we seek to train them to be great parents of children. Maybe that is a glimpse into the kingdom. I want a big family, but I want a big family of disciples. I want a family of disciples who then make other disciples. So, Jesus tells these two gentlemen, see that no one knows what happened in here today. Well, think about this for a moment. How could they possibly do this? The greatest thing that could ever happen to you has just happened. Now, don't tell anybody about it. See, when something like that happens to most people, at least today it goes viral on social media somewhere. It's on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat or TikTok. I don't know. I can't keep up with all of them. MeWe, Parler. It goes on and on. We can't help but share the good news when something of that significance happens to us. So, what do you think these formerly blind men do? Well, when they left the house, now they're seeing, and they spread the news about Jesus all over the country. So there's three significant things in succession. It's no wonder that Jesus then had to leave Capernaum. Because of these works being news of these works being spread all over the area, that just increased the crowds all around Jesus. And these crowds are those who are not there to be disciples. They're coming to just see some sensational act. Or as Jesus would later say, they were coming for the loaves and fishes. They were only coming for what they can get. So, as the news spread, the pressure from the crowds increased. And we'll see this develop more when they get back from this missions trip they're about to go on. Faith must have obedience. It was just not enough that they believed. they needed to obey. And it was harder for them to obey than to believe. We all often struggle more with obedience than we do faith. You know, for instance, a child easily has faith. But how about their propensity to obey? You know, they can believe, but when you tell them it's time to go to bed, that's a different story. Or give them other instructions. It's different. Let's read on. Matthew 9 still, verses 32 through 34. Another account. As they went out, behold, they brought to him a man mute and demon-possessed. And when the demon was cast out, the mute spoke, and the multitudes marveled, saying, It was never seen like this in Israel. But the Pharisees said, He casts out demons by the ruler of demons. There they are again. Jesus and his crew go out of the house. A man who cannot speak and is, as we would term in modern phrasing, he is demonized. And someone brings him to Jesus. So, Jesus does what Jesus always does. He casts out the demon, and he healed the man, and the man's now able to speak. Notice what we find here in this little story. There is a multitude. The crowd, the multitude, is looking for something sensational. And this time they were wowed. It was, they would go on and on about this marvelous thing that they had just seen. There are also true disciples there who are following Jesus. And, of course, there are the ubiquitous unbelievers who are going to find fault and place blame and explain away every miracle as if it were the work of Satan. Jesus did have his haters. There are always going to be unbelievers, naysayers in the crowd. You should just expect them to be there. They're always going to be there. I'd like to move on, but I really am out of time this evening. If you'd like to do a little homework, we're going back to the book of Mark in chapter 6. So if you'd like to start reading there, you'll get a preview of where we're headed the next time we get together. And so thank you for joining in today in our midweek encouragement. I encourage you to join us again next week. Same place you're watching now, same time for our midweek encouragement. In the meantime, I encourage you to love God, love people, fast, pray, give generously. Now go make disciples.